It's 4 o'clock on Thursday, and you know what that means. It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi's Quarantini Happy Hour. Yahoo! And here we go. Hello, everybody. Today's show, we are going to look at Steven Pressfield's third book on this topic, Turning Pro. I'm going to pick some selected parts of this and read it and do a little deep thinking. Welcome to the big show, everybody. Glad to see you here. Let's see who we've got. Ewart Williams, Ghost Young, Michael, Giovanni, Peter Rahal, Martin, John Pearson, Terrell Beckless, Riney Bear, Bob Gunnerfeld, Andre Stepanian, Brad Gray, Martin Gravel, Greg Carosa, Timothy Cook, Christopher Jones. Hey, Chris, how are you? Super Blonde. Yep, deep thinking. Today we are going to do some deep thinking. Super Blonde, I saw a comment that you had somewhere, and I wanted to answer it, and I didn't write it down before I closed the page. It was a suggestion for a show, and it was something that we've done already. Oh, I know what it was. Super Blonde suggested doing an episode on how people organize what they're working on material-wise, what they've submitted, where it's gone, all that organizational stuff. And as most of you old-timers here know, and I don't mean that, in age so much as the amount of time you've been involved in taxi TV, we've covered this topic. We certainly covered it at the Road Rally with Keith LeBrant regarding his great invention, which is called Composer Catalog. So rather than being repetitious, Super Blonde, go check out composercatalog.com. It is by far the best answer to what you seek. Pretty much all the members who are like really in the thick of it and either becoming successful or already successful use it, and they all love it. And he's constantly improving it, and once you buy it, you don't have to pay for updates or upgrades or any of that stuff. Greg Carosa is using it right now. How about that? There you go. Okay, so... All right. Also, I appreciate, Glenn Letts made a suggestion in the comments yesterday. Hi, Michael. As you requested, here are some ideas for Thursday's show. When should taxi members open their own publishing company for their own submissions? And question number 2, one of the photos inside the Beatles album cover for Let It Be shows Paul singing into 2 different mics that are taped together. Why do they do that? And then number 3, at what point should taxi members register their instrumental cues or songs with their PRO? So, and I'll get to, Andre made a suggestion, as did Ewart Williams. But let me answer Glenn's questions right now. I could use burn a little time productively before we get into talking about Pressfield's book, which will also be very productive, I have a feeling. So, number 1 question from Glenn Letts is, why should taxi members open, or when, big difference, when should taxi members open their own publishing company for their own submissions? Well, truth be told is you actually don't really need to technically set up a publishing company, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, any of the guys in the chat that are this far down the road and may have a differing opinion from what I'm about to say, which is the reason people create publishing companies is so that your PRO has a place to send the check for the publisher's share of any payments should you get paid on any performance income. Half of it would go to the publisher and half of it would go to the writer. The writer, of course, is you. In the case where you, let's say, make a pitch directly to a music supervisor and get something in a film or a TV show, and you are, in fact, still the publisher because you haven't given up any publishing rights or any master rights or the writer's share rights, the PRO sends a check for half to the publisher and half to the writer. So what you would do is, can you set up a publishing company? Sure. Could you file a DBA doing business as? Yeah. and set up a simple little company, sure, why not? And then you have to take that DBA to the bank and probably get a tax ID number and show the bank that you've got those ducks in a row before you can open up a business checking account or bank account, period. Or you could go the easier route, which I believe is totally kosher, which is simply on the part of the form for the PRO that says, what's the publishing company? Just say it's Glenn Letts Music Enterprises or Glenn Letts Music Publishing, Glenn Letts whatever. That way they're going to fill it out. They're going to make out that check to Glenn Letts Enterprises. And I think most banks won't have a problem with you taking a check made out to Glenn Letts Enterprises and depositing it in your regular Glenn Letts bank account versus setting up a small business in name and in bank account and all that stuff. So can I get opinions from, let's see, Robbie Hancock says some of the libraries require it now to have your own publishing entity and IPI as well as your writer's IPI. Good to know. I didn't know that. Marion Laird still typing one-handed, so please excuse typos. Okay, I'm guessing you're either cooking, eating, or you hurt your hand. Gray, you're funny. Won't Glenn be upset if I call my publishing Glenn Letts? Yeah, he might. Greg Carroza says, I've co-written a few songs that are only represented. So I set up a publishing entity with my PRO to get those royalties, as you said. Also, a few libraries require it now as well. So there you go. That's confirmation. John Pearson says, Michael, a certain library owner pitches to Daytime Soaps wanted to have me list a publishing company on my submission forms. I already have one, though. So there you go. So it sounds like it's becoming a thing with libraries that they want you to have a publishing company. So go ahead, come up with the name, make sure nobody else has it, which, of course, if it's Glenn Letts, Music Enterprises or Glenn Letts Music Publishing, chances are nobody on the planet's going to have it unless you've got an evil twin with the same name somewhere that's also in the music business. So set that up, file a fictitious business name statement. I think you have to publish it somewhere. You can either publish it on the internet or in your local newspaper, in like a little $10 classified ad. Let it run a couple of times. And then you probably need to get a tax ID number. The business would probably be considered a sole proprietorship. I mean, it would be silly, I think, at this stage of the game to set up an LLC or a corporation. I know in the state of California, it's about $800 a year to have either of those entities, whether they generate any income or not. You pay $800 a year. One reason to have an LLC or a corporation is you get a certain amount of protection. Should somebody sue you, they can only go after the corporation, which would be the publishing company, and not come after you personally and try and take your house away. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but the odds of that happening are not that great. I mean, if you were extremely prolific and well into your career and had a bunch of stuff out there in the field, especially more so in the songwriting world, in the record side of things, more so than doing instrumental cues, I would think you would have to worry about that. So there is that, having that corporate shell, which, by the way, they can pierce the corporate shell or corporate veil, as it's sometimes called, if you commingle expenses. If you, for instance, are charging a lot of stuff, here's some things. I was told this by an attorney several years ago when I was involved in a lawsuit, that if somebody owns a corporation and they've got several family members also getting paid through that corporation, and they've got their cars and they're this and they're that, all kinds of stuff, if you kind of exceed the bounds of what might be considered good taste by the IRS, in what you're running through your corporation, looking to either save, buy stuff with pre-tax dollars, use it as write-offs, etc., then you have commingled your personal life with your corporation, which in some cases will allow the people suing you to then pierce the corporate shell. So there's a lot to be known. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just giving you some anecdotal stuff that I've heard along the way. You would be really smart to, check it out with a true professional. Robbie Hancock has a question. Michael, you recently ran a listing asking for Canadian composers only. Do you know why they would only accept Canadians? Not that I'm complaining, because Robbie is a Canadian. Yes, they only want people who love beer and hockey. So I'm kidding, of course. I think it has something to do with Canadian content laws. I'm guessing that library is probably regularly working with the show that in one way or another is entangled with the whole Canadian content thing. I know nothing about it other than it exists, and I bumped into it in this kind of context a few times in my career. That would be my guess. Hello, Amanda. Yep, Robbie says, I think it has something to do with CANCON, Canadian content. Yep, I believe you are correct. Refers to the Canadian Radio and Television and Communications Commission requirements derived from the Broadcasting Act of Canada. There you go. Okay, so that answered question number 1 from Glenn Letts about having a publishing company. Number 2, one of the photos inside the Beatles album cover for Let It Be shows Paul singing into 2 different mics that are taped together. Why do they do that? 2 reasons that I can think of. First of all, the important thing to know, is Glenn in the chat room today? Because I would love to know. I don't have that photo handy. If it's a live thing, I know the reason. If it's live, it probably means that they're recording the show and that the live engineer really wants to use a certain kind of mic because it reduces feedback and it works best with his or her PA system. They've got their way of working and the mics that they like. The engineer, okay, Glenn is there. Great. Glenn, do you know if it was, that shot was taken in a live situation or a studio situation? Because if it's live, I think I just answered the question. While you're pondering that, I'm going to take a swig of iced coffee. Wow, that's really good iced coffee, if I do say so myself. Glenn's going to look for that photo, I'm guessing. I'm dying to know. Okay, well, a live recording session, meaning like a live performance, like, the band playing a live gig and they were recording it. So, like I said before, if it's a live show, because I've actually worked, using a remote truck before on live gigs, and the PA guys, especially if they've been on tour with the same act for quite some time, they've got everything down to a science. So the last thing they want is to have somebody like me, an engineer, show up who's going to record 3 nights of shows in 3 different locations, maybe even in the same location, who knows. And the audio engineer on the record side says, well, I'd really like the vocalist to sing into this 87. Well, we all know that an 87 doesn't look good on stage. You want something more like a Shure SM58 or something that, doesn't cover your whole face. So in that case, what engineers will do will be take the 2 microphones, tape them together, and that way each engineer gets what he or she is after, right? So that makes sense. Now, in the case of if it's in a studio situation, There have been innumerable times where I've recorded a vocalist using 2 or 3 microphones, because I just want to see which one sounds best, but I don't want to spend, a couple $100 an hour. There are times that I didn't want to spend a half an hour testing out different mics to see which one sounded best on the vocalist. So I would take like an 87 and a 414 and just stack them like that, where the 87 was hanging down from a boom and the 414 was hanging up from a boom, thereby the capsules for the 2 microphones. Oh, look, I can do a whole show covering my face. The capsules would be here and here, so they're very close, so they're going to hear the same thing coming out of the vocalist's mouth. Obviously, you're not going to tape those together, although you might want to, just because if you don't, if the vocalist is moving around and they're on a wood floor, there could be some slight movements in the mic stand and, this microphone stand and that boom stand. And it might cause the microphones just to move a little bit and rub against each other. So you could probably put a little tape on there to keep them from moving. So that's my guess. Does the 2 microphones make the singer louder? Well, you know what? Actually, if you throw them out of phase, it'll make the singer quieter. Speaking of the Beatles, oh my gosh. Last night we watched a really good animated movie done by Pixar on Disney Plus. One of my older daughters, actually daughter number 3, has a Disney Plus account. And she texted us and said, you guys have to watch this Pixar film called Soul, Soul. And our other daughter number 4, is actually home right now. And so we decided to do a cuddly little family movie night in the family room. And when the movie was over, and it was really good, you should watch it. It's really cute, makes you think a little bit, which is hard for me. But it's warm and fuzzy and inspiring and deep and very, very good. So I recommend it. It's called Soul. And then at the end, my wife and my daughter went upstairs to start getting ready for bed. And I stayed around downstairs in the family room looking at my laptop, which is where the film had just played, and I had Disney Plus. I was scrolling through because I wanted to see what Disney Plus was all about. I've never looked to see what kind of content they have on there. I didn't know this, but Peter Jackson, the famous movie director who's done all the Lord of the Rings stuff and a bunch of other great stuff, Peter Jackson is doing a Beatles thing, a Beatles documentary. Let me see if I can find this quickly. I don't want to play it over the air because I'll get in trouble for that. Anyway, all I can tell you is I think that footage, it's a 5-minute thing with about 3 minutes of Peter Jackson talking about it. And he said, look, we don't have a trailer yet. It's coming out sometime in 2021. They're currently editing it in Iceland, I believe. He's got a room full of Beatles guitars and memorabilia. I don't know if it's the real deal or if they're props, but just an impressive stash of stuff that he's hanging out with while he's talking in the edit room. And then he said, I've got a few minutes of stuff I want to play for you. It's not cut like a trailer. It's not a particular excerpt from the film. It's just some stuff that we thought really captured the vibe and the tone of the film. So we put it together. Here we go. He hits play. Liz says it's called Get Back and the trailer is online. Okay, so make sure you watch it. It's technically not a trailer. He actually said that it's not a trailer, but all I can tell you is watch it. I watched it 4 times last night. It's like 2 or 3 minutes long. I don't really have a better word for it than it's kind of adorable. You see the Beatles in the process of recording the song Get Back, but they're in the studio and they are so happy. I mean, and Yoko is already on the scene, and it was, this footage is, not that far in advance of when the Beatles broke up. And my understanding was that, they were just miserable and had to force themselves to be in the same room together, and that Yoko made life miserable. Anyway, they are having a good time. And it's the Beatles interacting, just being silly and goofy. And they're really, you don't get a sense that they're hamming it up for the camera as much as that's who they are. Anyway, New Zealand, sorry. Not Iceland. Well, I got the LAND part right, Jim. Lamar saw it. Yep, there was real joy between them. Yoko there, and they still looked happy. Yep. Soul got a 96 on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, it's really cute. I admit, I dozed off 3 times during the film and probably missed some 15-minute sections of it, but it was really good. My wife absolutely loved it. Our 20-year-old daughter, I think, slept through about 80% of it, but our 24-year-old really, really liked it. And she's pretty critical, so that's why we decided to watch it. Oh, yeah. Oh, man, the piano playing in the movie Soul, yes. Amanda, you're going to bed? Damn, have some coffee, young lady. All right, good night. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite. Anyway, watch Soul. Very, very good. Highly recommended. The music is really cool. And that Beatles trailer, I am like counting the minutes now till that comes out. So there you go. And number 3 on the list of Glenn Letz's questions: at what point should taxi members register their instrumental cues / songs with their PRO? Different folks have different opinions on this. Sometimes some libraries don't like you to register the stuff with the PRO because then they've got to change the registration when you sign it to them. So it really kind of depends. If primarily what you're after is working with music libraries, this is just what I've heard from fellow members, which I'm sure that they would be happy to confirm or deny in the chat room in a moment, is they don't bother registering instrumental cues with their PROs, because if they're planning to work with libraries, then they know that the library is going to register the stuff. Robbie Hancock doesn't register. He said there's only one library that has ever asked. Yeah, Robbie doesn't register instrumental cues at all. Amanda registers all songs before sending them anywhere, but with a PRO, or register the copyright, Amanda. And by the way, aren't you supposed to be in bed? Damn it. We've got her hooked now. She's not going anywhere. Yeah, Greg Carosa confirms, says exactly, don't register instrumentals because the library is going to register them, and they would just have to undo that registration or transfer it or amend it or whatever you call it. In Ireland, they also register the copyright. I gotcha. Yeah, it really is like a different world. If you're going to send music out to the record side of the industry and you're pitching songs for artists that are already signed to labels, I would definitely register my copyrights. You don't really need, a PRO collects money when the song plays on a radio or a TV show or whatever. So being registered with a PRO when you're shopping tunes for other artists to do is kind of meaningless. However, registering the copyright, I would highly recommend. But then again, I know the vast majority of our active and successful members don't register the copyright for instrumental cues because it's costly, and the odds of that cue making you any big chunks of money are not that great. It's small amounts of money times many amounts or many placements. So it's a numbers game. BMI guy said, register a song with a PRO when you release it. Yeah, you don't need to have a PRO working for you until there's something for them to collect. the only way for them to collect something is if it's out there being performed in any capacity: radio, TV, live performance, jukebox in a restaurant, etc. Restaurant, gosh, I remember restaurants. Yeah, it sounds like everybody's pretty much on the same page for all that stuff. Okay, so then let's move on to Andrei Stepanian's thing. Is Andrei in the house tonight? Didn't I say hi to him already? He's in there, right? Andrei, I actually have a question to ask you. I'm going to call you after the show today, so if you see a telephone call coming in from an 818 area code, that would be me, and that'll happen probably right around 5:15, I would guess. So hopefully you'll be around. If not, give me a call back. Okay, so Andre says, "Hi, Michael. The episode with Steven Baird about 3 years ago, How to Make Six-Figure Income, is what inspired me to finally join Taxi, amongst other reasons. It'd be cool to touch base and maybe have him on a show and see where he's at, and if he has any new advice these days on tips and tricks, and if he is still doing it or feels like it. Just an idea." I think it's a really good idea. I actually really, really, really adore, there's that word adore again. Steve Baird he's just a cool guy. He's very positive, very hardworking, very grounded, very realistic. And really, really hardworking. Did I tell you how hardworking he is? So, yeah, I would love to get Baird back on the show. I think that's a great idea. I remember when I first met him at a road rally, gosh, had to be around 2008, 2009. We set up a video camera, professional videographer with good lighting and everything in a room, and we told everybody, hey, if you want to talk about your experience as a Taxi member, want to talk about Taxi, the road rally, or just your experience as a musician, doesn't have to be about Taxi, just walk into suite 101 and get in line and walk up and take 3 minutes and yammer away on camera. And one of the people that did it was Steve Baird. And he was wearing, isn't it funny how you remember certain things? He was wearing kind of a Kelly Green t-shirt that said "carries no cash" on it, which is ironic, and whatever the opposite of prophetic would be, because he is definitely amongst our highest earning Taxi members. He's a guy that just works his butt off, makes a ton of music, gets out there and hustles and has music in many, many libraries, gets tons of placements, and he's definitely a member of the Six-Figure Income Club. So, hello, Karen Brasher. Hello, Linda Cullum. How are you? Yeah, that's a great idea. As a matter of fact, I am going to pull out my Week at a Glance book, and I'm going to call Steve and see if he will do a show with me. Call Steve Baird. Okay, so I'm already booked. I've got a show planned for Monday, January 11th, which is this coming Monday. We're going to listen to the Taxi Top 10 for the month of January. And then I've got a show already scheduled for Monday, January 18th, which is we're going to do put you in the A&R Hot Seat episode. We haven't done one of those in a little while, and I know you guys really like them, and I enjoy doing them. So that's what we're going to do, is on the 18th, we will do you are in the A&R Hot Seat. Should this be a forward or a return? I love watching you guys, I love watching the gears turn in your heads as those songs play, and you type stuff in the chat room. Hello, Greg LaSalle. I grew up in LaSalle County. Okay. Let's see. Ewert Williams had a suggestion for a future show, maybe 2 parts. He says, what composition would you like to be remembered for? Meaning you, not me. What is your legacy masterpiece? edit it down to maximum 2 minutes, and if someone's interested in hearing more, just leave a link. Oh, and why do you think it is? Didn't understand that. And only play music from people who are in the chat room. So basically, it's like, show us your best stuff and tell us why you're so proud of this. And so that definitely, I will hang on to that and try and make a show out of that. It'll probably be a little while because we're going to do 2 music listening shows in a row on the next 2 Mondays. A masterpiece. Yes, definitely a masterpiece. So last night, I think I mentioned to you guys, we did something that we've never, ever done before in the company's 28 year, going into our 29th year on January 15th. We've never done a new member hangout, specifically for people who joined in the last 30 days. So we did that last night, and I did it on Zoom. And I've got to tell you, first of all, it went really, really well. We had, at least 50 people show up for it. We had no idea if we'd get 5 people or 500 people, but I figured it would be under 100, and I think we had like 53 or something like that. And then, of course, today we got a bunch of emails from people saying, oh, damn, I missed it. But we are sending it out. We're sending out a link to the people who joined in the last 30 days so that they can watch it. And I did record the Zoom session. Or actually, Bria recorded the Zoom session. So I felt that it went really well. I think the people who watched liked it, but it was so weird for me because rather than having you guys in a chat room, there were all these faces, much like the Zoom that Robbie did during the off hours of the Road Rally, the hangouts that he did. It was funny. I mean, first of all, I was nervous. I've got to admit, I was nervous to actually be seeing the people that I was talking to because, I'm antisocial. I was into social distancing before it was cool. And with you guys, I'm so comfortable in the Taxi TV regular show audience. I'm comfortable and I love dealing with the chat room. But seeing this wall full of people looking at me was a little intimidating for the first couple of minutes. Then I warmed up to it. But it was also a little hard to concentrate because I would see people that were eating during the show. There were a couple folks that had, children like walk in the room and sit on their laps. It was cool. It was like real life. I was getting a look at their lives as they were seeing me at my home. So that was a strange, but not a bad experience, just different. There was one gentleman that had like a hand puppet, a pretty big hand puppet that was some kind of, I don't know if it was like a pterodactyl or some kind of weird animal, but it covered his arm and his whole hand, and he kept putting it up to the screen and doing that. Thought that was a little unusual, but he seemed like a very nice guy. And Giovanni says, you're glad that I can't see your face? Oh, come on, I don't know. Yeah, we did mute all the mics, and then we would unmute them when they, had a question, and they did the I got a question button, and then we would go to them with the question and unmute them. Martin says, you better not see my COVID confinement face, believe me. Oh, there's Megan. She was on the show last night. Jason Trachtenberg had the puppet. I couldn't resist Googling him. Yeah, I should Google him. Hey, Megan, how are you? I've got to say, Megan, you were the standout last night because everybody looked so serious, and I couldn't tell if it was like going well or not going well, Here, the chat room, I feel like it's always going well. I know I've got a friendly crowd and all that, but there were a lot of people like, very stoic looking crowd. And then I see this one smiling lady in the middle of the screen, and it was Megan. So thank you for making me feel at ease last night. And I hope that you guys all thought it went as well as we did. Once I got into my rhythm, I felt like it was going really, really well. And I think I covered a lot of ground. The thing lasted for almost 2 hours last night. Frankly, it could have gone on for another half an hour. but I'd kicked my wife and my daughter out of the house. They were out, and then they came back. But I said, don't come back in while I'm in the middle of a show. You can't be walking through the house. So my daughter was sitting in the driveway in a car listening to music, and my wife was sitting on the back patio. And the whole time I'm doing the thing, like every 15 minutes, I see my wife's face pressed against the glass out there. Yeah, you really did. You made me more comfortable last night, so thanks, Megan. Um, Yeah, it was just for new members. And thank you for saying that, Ron. I appreciate it. I didn't open it up to the general public because I didn't want a lot of chit chat going on in the chat room. Frankly, I didn't even have the chat room window open because I didn't want to get distracted by it. I knew that I had a ton of information to get out in a big hurry. And I thought that if we had a bunch of the regular crowd in there, that it would take away from the feeling of this is just for new members. And it's funny, right before today's show, I was looking at my new member Zoom notes for 2021 and looking on here to see if there was anything that I told them last night that we've never discussed, either on regular Taxi TV or in the Quarantinis. And frankly, there wasn't. I don't think I covered one thing. I covered a lot of stuff. This was like everything you guys have learned in an hour and 45 minutes. I was kind of racing through it. But I had this idea, I think a month ago, and I got very excited about it. And I wanted to do it because all these things I told them last night are things that you guys have all learned in pieces along the way. And I thought, wow, how cool would that be to become a brand new Taxi member and have all this stuff in your head before you start submitting and kind of know the rules of the game and such. Taxi Cliff Notes, there you go. Cass, hey, I'm a new member every year. Yeah, we had somebody, our refund policy says that you can only get a refund on your first year of membership because otherwise people would join for a year, get a refund, join again for another year, ask for a refund, join again for another year, get a refund. We actually have people that will do that, try to do that. So we put in the refund, the guarantee policy statement, whatever you want to call it. It actually says you can only get a refund for your first year of membership. So we actually have had people that didn't renew for a second and third year, but they came back, 6 years later and joined again, and then came back 2 years after that and joined again. And each time asked for a refund. And if we say to them, look, that, we only give a refund for the first year, because if you come back for subsequent years, clearly you like what you got from Taxi, or you wouldn't keep coming back. And we wanted to dissuade people from taking advantage of our very generous 12-month guarantee. So we actually get people, just had one a few months ago that had been a member 3 or 4 times, gotten a refund each time, actually signed a letter that we sent saying, look, I understand that I've gotten a refund before, and that if I come back again, I am not eligible to ask for a refund. Fine, I'm very happy to sign that. Send it to me. Send it to him. He sent it back, acknowledging that he understood the terms of the relationship from that point forward. And then when he asked for another refund and we wouldn't give it to him, he filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau and a couple other places on the internet. People freak me out. All right. And now it's story time, kids. All right. For those of you who might be new to watching this, there's an author named Steven Pressfield who has written a bunch of books. He's best known for, in his fiction world, he wrote the book Bagger Vance, which became the movie with Will Smith and that handsome blonde young man. I can't remember his name. Anyway, Pressfield wrote The War of Art, there are 3 books: The War of Art, Do the Work, and Turning Pro. And when I recommend them, people a lot of times will buy Turning Pro because they think, well, I'm going to cut right to the chase and just learn how to become a professional by reading this relatively skinny book. They are quick reads. Linda Cullum says quick reads. Yep, they're quick reads. They're easy reads. They're very engaging and tons of fun. So I cannot recommend his books enough. As a matter of fact, I interviewed him. He was our keynote interview this year for the virtual road rally. And he's just such a nice man, such a smart guy, kind of a Renaissance man. And he's a real thinker, He comes across as very, easy to talk to and engaging. I thought he would be kind of lofty and professorial, but he's not. He's like somebody you would do a road trip with, Anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed interviewing him, and I was really, really glad that he agreed to do it. So here are some things that I saw in his book before I did started today's show, and I wanted to share them with you. All right, and I'm always talking about how I make notes and stuff. So there you go, very typical pages in books that I read. So this is on page 34 of Turning Pro, and I made a note at the top that says, "A poorly written cue!" exclamation point. And the title of this, they're like little mini chapters, sometimes only a page or a half a page, sometimes 2 or 3 pages. This one's called The Definition of Boring. Something that's boring goes nowhere. It travels in a circle. It never arrives at its destination. The repetitive nature of the shadow life and of addiction is what makes both so tedious. No traction is ever gained. No progress is ever made. We're stuck in the same endlessly repeating loop. That's what makes addiction like hell. So he says all addictions share, among other things, 2 primary qualities. They embody repetition without progress. They produce incapacity as a payoff. There you go. That's a payoff nobody wants, incapacity. Anyway, I didn't concentrate so much on the addiction part of this, and he talks about addiction in his books. I've never asked the question if he personally has had an addiction problem, but he talks about addiction in many forms, not just drugs or alcohol. He talks about addictions to bad habits, again, not necessarily related to drugs or alcohol. But something that's boring goes nowhere. It travels in a circle. It never arrives at its destination. So that, to me, was talking about a poorly written instrumental cue. On one hand, you want your instrumental cue to be the same motif from top to bottom. It can't be like a score that changes tempo or emotion or motif in the middle, because the editor that uses it needs it to be one thing. However, at the same time, they need it to have a sense of moving forward. So as I've said on the show many times, a cue starts out, kind of sparse here, little intro to no intro at all, kind of bangs right into an A section, sparse instrumentation, then 4 bars, 8 bars, 16 bars later, add some more instrumentation, maybe another 8 or 16 bars, more instrumentation, and then boom, strip it back down to the basics again and do that for a couple of bars, and then start building it back up again, step it back up, and then boom, big finish, which would be a buttoned ending, or if it's something a little more bombastic, it would be a stinger ending, which I compare to a button ending is a period, a stinger ending is an exclamation point. Easy way to remember it. So I just thought that, something that's boring goes nowhere. And it's something that we hear with people who are just getting into creating instrumental cues. They haven't yet learned the art of sticking with one central idea, with one motif for 90 seconds or 2 minutes. They haven't learned how to give it some dynamic interest and some forward momentum yet. And it's not that hard, but there's a learning curve to it. And so the stuff they turn in, it's like, wow, that sounds pretty good. Like, good melody, good playing, good engineering, good production, but it's just the same thing over and over and over. It doesn't go anywhere. To which when they see that critique, they must think, geez, well, you told me, it can't be like all over the place. It can't be scored. It can't change emotion. It can't change tempo. It can't change melody. So how do you avoid being boring? Well, I told you, it's stacking it up, breaking it down, stacking it back up, breaking it down. So yeah, the definition of boring, it goes nowhere. So it's always a happy day for me personally when I see one of you guys or somebody I know who's a taxi member and they've figured out how to do that. Because kind of once the light goes on, then it's easy to bring that to bear in all subsequent pieces that you compose. The arc. Yes, I did explain the arc last night. I told him it's not an arc like this. It's not like the arch in St. Louis. The arc is like a story arc, where there's a beginning and a middle and an end. So that was kind of cool. Let's see, why? Oh, that post-it was for the previous page. Addicted to failure. This is from page 37. There's a difference between failing, which is let me start over. There's a difference between failing, which is a natural and normal part of life, and being addicted to failure. Boy, you spend a lot of time talking about addiction. When we're addicted to failure, we enjoy it. Each time we fail, we're secretly relieved. There's a glamour to failure that has been mined for centuries by starving poets, romantic suicides, and other self-defined doomed souls. The glamour inverts failure and turns it into success. Once again, the payoff is incapacity. When we fail, we're off the hook. I've seen that a lot. As most of you know, I've been involved with musicians since I've been 19 years old. That's all I've ever done in my life is deal with musicians and the music they create. And I've seen a lot of people who I would say are addicted to failure. They almost wear it like a badge of honor, like somebody else did this to them, and that gets them off the hook. And let's face it, the vast majority of times that you fail not because of external circumstances or influences. You fail because you weren't up to the task yet. You weren't good enough yet. You didn't get it right enough yet. Something that you could probably improve upon to move past the failure. But I've seen it become an addiction to people. I've got a couple of friends in my real life, my non-music industry life, that one friend I speak to on the phone quite often, and you call her and say, how are you? She's always kind of had health issues. You call her, like Eeyore, the cartoon character, and it's sad. She's a family friend. We all love her. We all respect her. She's an incredibly smart, warm, generous person. But I think that a lot of her health issues are up there, that she enjoys not being healthy because it brings her attention or something. So she is addicted to her point of failure is not having good health. Anyway, addicted to sex. Let's skip that chapter because this is a family show. Here's a biggie. And I mentioned this the other day when I did the New Year's resolution show. When you sit down to do your work, do you leave your web connection on? Well, now it's not, it's not only your laptop, it's this bad boy right there. Someday, 1,000 years from now, when they're digging us up, like the ancient ruins, at the pyramids at Giza, someday, when they dig us up and they find bones and other remains, they're going to see cell phones which will have survived the millennia right next to us. So probably, if they ever perfect batteries, they'll probably still be open to Facebook or Twitter or wherever you last were, TikTok. Didn't I quote the other day? I think I saw a statistic that said the average person in the United States, I believe, I'm not sure if this was a global statistic, the average person spends 2.5 hours per day on social media. 2.5 hours a day. That to me is mind-blowing. How much lost productivity? I love that word because productivity just doesn't sound that good. Productivity sounds like I'm very sophisticated because I monitor productivity. Anyway, think about how much more you could accomplish in your life if you weren't pissing away your time looking at, cat stuff or whatever. Excuse me. Not that I don't enjoy a good cat video or a cat meme or any kind of meme or funny stuff on TikTok. I mean, it is enjoyable and it certainly gets the dopamine in your brain flowing. But what does it really get you in the grand scheme of things? How does it make you a better person? How does it really enrich your life? It does bring you some happiness and some pleasure. I will give you that. But does it make you a richer person for having seen it? I would say probably most of the time, not so much. Oh, Marion's still in a splint for a couple of weeks. Okay, so you did injure yourself. Wow, Songs from a Headband says, I've been around one of my piano students who spent the first 10 minutes of her lesson talking about all the health issues with her life. It's sad, I don't want to try and diagnose anybody or, step out of bounds on how other people live their lives. And it's always heartbreaking when I see people in my professional life that are musicians that they love complaining about not getting forwarded. They love about how the industry has kept them out. They love complaining about how nobody appreciates their music. They almost they wear it like a badge of honor rather than just going, well, what is it? If I'm not making it in music before Taxi, I'm not making it through Taxi, I haven't made it by putting my music out on the internet. So, take a moment, step back and look at the situation and say, well, maybe the music just isn't that good yet. Maybe it's not appealing to people. But you might be that close. The famous cartoon with the guy with the pickaxe digging a tunnel, and he's like 3 inches away from, going where the wall in the tunnel is and breaking through, and he gives up and goes home dragging the pickaxe behind him. If you'd only gone 3 more inches, that might be the case for people who aren't successful yet with their music. Maybe they're that close, even if they're like that far away. There's always a way to get there. Okay, so we talked about not leaving your web connection on. Addicted to trouble, that's another, I don't know what you would call it, but something else I see. People who are addicted, it's always something. A piece of gear melted down on me, my computer crashed, I've got a hum in the electrical and the AC in the room I use as my studio. All right, well then just take a weekend and figure it out and move forward. Damn it. Too bad Amanda went to sleep. Amanda, you're in bed, right? Here's a page called Jewish Despair and Irish Despair. I'm not going to read it because it looks a little too deep to get into here. But see, me being Jewish and Amanda being Irish, we could probably relate to that. The habits and addictions of the amateur are conscious or unconscious self-inflicted wounds. The habits and addictions of the amateur are conscious or unconscious self-inflicted wounds. The payoff, once again, is incapacity. There's my wife staring at me through the glass. She just came back from walking and she's standing on the patio. She doesn't want to come in while I'm doing the big show here. The amateur is terrified. Fear is the primary color of the amateur's interior world. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of looking foolish. We've all had that moment, right? Every one of us. Fear of underachieving and fear of overachieving, fear of poverty, fear of loneliness, fear of death. But most importantly, what we all fear as amateurs is being excluded from the tribe. That's interesting. The gang, the posse, mother and father, family, nation, race, religion. The amateur fears that if he turns pro and lives out his calling, he will have to live up to who he really is and what he's truly capable of. The amateur is terrified that if the tribe should discover who he really is, he will be kicked out into the cold to die. I have told you this before, and I swear by this, that I had no choice but to make Taxi a success. I had no plan B. We quickly, almost instantly, were broke. I mean, like broke enough to get eviction notices on the door every month for better part of a year. I didn't want to fail in front of my family. I didn't want to fail in front of my kids. Didn't want to fail in front of my wife. And fear of poverty, no question. In my case, I used all those fears to give me the strength to keep going on the days where I just had no mental strength to keep going, no physical strength to keep going. I had to keep going because I didn't want to fail in front of my family, and we had to find a way to make enough money to eat and pay rent. At one point, we were so broke and the company just wasn't taking off that I really truly thought about leaving Los Angeles, moving back to Illinois. The house I grew up in Little Farm Town, was sitting there empty. My parents had moved into an apartment in Chicago and started a business there. So my then brand new wife, Deb, who still married to me, I really thought that I was going to have to say, honey, we got to pack up a car and move to Illinois and live in that empty house. Thank God. You know what? Just like the guy digging the tunnel that was 3 inches away, shortly after that moment of despair was when the company started to gain some traction. We were able to eat and pay rent in the same month. Whew. Let's look for one more. I've got 2 more minutes here. One more thing. The amateur craves third-party validation. I'm not sure that that's just amateurs. I think even professionals do. I'm not sure. I may have to call Steve about this one. The amateur is tyrannized by his imagined conception of what is expected of him. The amateur is tyrannized by his imagined conception of what is expected of him. The amateur craves third-party validation. I think we all crave validation, don't we? Especially people who are creating art or, creating anything. You want people to go, oh, that's a great song, or that's a lovely painting, or that's a fantastic book that you've written. The amateur lives by the opinions of others. Anyway, there you go. Some wise words from Steven Pressfield from his book Turning Pro, but as I always say, buy the other one first. Buy The War of Art first. Robbie Hancock, gotta run. Take care. You're welcome, Robbie. Thanks. Have a good night. I need another swig of the iced coffee. Okay, so that's about it. We're going to wrap up here. Thank you for joining me. Enjoyed seeing you guys and hanging out. Can I talk about the importance of track titling? We've actually done that before. If you go look at the archives of shows, you will probably find that show. We actually, I think, took some titles from members and we all kind of judged them together to see if they were great or not great. But Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing it again. We could do another episode where people submit titles in a piece of music and we see if the title works, because I am probably the single loudest mouthpiece about how incredibly important great titles are. If you're a video editor and you're working on a reality show and you've got a scene that takes place that's kind of quirky and funny, it takes place in a swimming pool, and you're looking through stuff, and if it's called Tommy's Song or whoops. Oh, man. That's my friend Adam Zelkind. He always calls when I'm in the middle of a show or in the bathroom or something. Anyway, if your title doesn't telegraph what the music sounds like, then you're only doing yourself a disservice. So with that, I bid you a fond farewell. If you haven't given us a like yet, please do. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. Thank you for joining me today, and don't forget to come back on Monday, 4 o'clock. We will be doing a show, which is, what am I doing Monday? Oh, playing the top 10, which I'm excited. I haven't listened to them yet. So that's that. And then the following Monday, which I believe is the 18th, we're going to do a show where you guys are in the A&R hot seat. So with that, I bid you a fond farewell. Bye-bye. Good night, you guys.